Tommy Shelby. The name itself carries a certain chill, doesn't it? A man wrapped in silence, power, and pain. He's not just a character from a TV series. He's a reflection of a generation scarred by war, molded by loss, and addicted to control. Behind those razor-sharp suits and steel-blue eyes hides something far more fragile. A man haunted by ghosts that never left the trenches. To the world, he's a leader, a gangster, a symbol of unstoppable ambition. But look closer, and you'll see a soul quietly falling apart, one cigarette at a time. Tommy isn't just fiction. He's Europe's son, born from the ruins of the First World War, carrying both the pride and the burden of rebuilding. His calmness is discipline, his cruelty, a shield. And every order he gives, every life he takes, feels less like choice and more like punishment. Not for others, but for himself. To understand Tommy Shelby, we must strip away the myth, the money, the violence, and face the man who can't sleep because the war never truly ended inside him. Before Tommy Shelby became the man who made the world tremble, he was just a boy who learned early what it meant to be unwanted. Born into the Romani community in early 20th century England, he grew up carrying a label society spat out like poison: gypsy. In a world obsessed with purity and class, that single word was enough to exile you for life. But the cruelty of exclusion is that it doesn't just lock you out. It begins to live inside you. Sociologists call this internalized stigma, when the hatred of others becomes your own voice. For Tommy, it planted a quiet conviction that he had to be twice as smart, twice as ruthless to survive. Every insult became fuel, every humiliation a rehearsal for power. He wore the name Shelby like armor, but the boy beneath it still flinched. Even as a man commanding armies of men, part of him still fought those street whispers from Small Heath. To be feared was safer than to be pitied. And so the legend began. Long before the war broke, Tommy, family had already begun the job. His mother's death by suicide left an invisible scar, the kind of wound that never bleeds, yet never heals. Psychologists say losing a parent early can alter a child's brain chemistry, shaping their ability to trust and form attachment. For Tommy, that loss hollowed him out, and when his father abandoned the family soon after, the message was clear. Love never stays. Aunt Polly stepped in, fierce, protective, but hardened by survival. Under her roof, tenderness was a luxury no one could afford. So Tommy learned the language of strength: silence. He trained himself to never need, never beg, never break. But repression is not healing. It's only delay. The boy who once wanted safety grew into a man who sought control, mistaking power for love, strategy for comfort. Every decision he made as an adult was an echo of that childhood. The orphan trying to build a world where no one could leave him again. Imagine living for years underground. No sunlight, only dirt, sweat, and the sound of your own heartbeat echoing in the dark. That was Tommy Shelby's war. As a tunneler in World War I, he dug beneath enemy lines, setting explosives while death breathed inches away. Psychiatrists today call it prolonged trauma exposure, the kind that rewires your nervous system until danger feels like home. When the war ended, Tommy didn't return as a hero. He came back as a ghost, wearing a soldier's body. He carried the sounds of shovels and screams into his dreams, and silence became unbearable because silence was where memory lived. Back then, shell shock was seen as weakness. Men like Tommy were told to toughen up, so they did. They smoked, drank, and hid behind stoic faces, while inside, their minds replayed the tunnels on a loop. What no one saw was that Tommy never truly left the battlefield. He just changed the uniform. The war beneath the earth became the war inside his head, Control. That's the word that defines Tommy Shelby. The crisp suits, the sharp words, the precise movements, all part of an illusion he built to cage the chaos inside. Psychologists often describe control as a trauma survivor's defense mechanism. When you've lived through helplessness, you begin to worship certainty. For Tommy, order was oxygen. Every plan, every deal, every threat was a way to silence the noise in his head. But control is a fragile god. The more he tried to dominate his world, the more it slipped through his fingers. Behind the calm mask, his mind burned. Sleepless nights, opium to numb the tremors, endless calculations to prevent disaster. He mistook rigidity for strength, yet it only deepened his isolation. In a Europe rebuilding itself after war, Tommy's obsession mirrored a continent's need to control its chaos. But unlike nations, he had no peace treaties. Only inner wars fought behind blue eyes that refused to blink. Sigmund Freud once wrote that every human carries two forces: eros, the will to live, and thanatos, the pull toward death. Tommy Shelby lives suspended between them. He seeks danger not for glory, but for relief. Every gunfight, every reckless decision is a quiet prayer for peace, even if that peace comes through destruction. Psychologists might call it trauma repetition, the compulsion to return to pain because it feels familiar. Watch him closely, how he walks into bullets with a calm smile, how he stares down death as if greeting an old friend. He doesn't fear it, he flirts with it. Because for men like Tommy, death isn't an ending. It's the only moment without noise. His war may have ended, but his mind never signed the ceasefire. And in that endless search for control, he finds himself drawn again and again to the very chaos he once escaped. In truth, he doesn't want to die. He just wants to stop surviving. For a man built on silence, love was never part of the plan. Yet when Grace walked into Tommy's life, something shifted. Her presence was disarming, not because she was perfect, but because she saw through the armor. Love, for Tommy, wasn't tenderness. It was exposure. Grace became the only mirror in which he could see himself without the smoke and blood. And for a brief, trembling moment, he believed he could be more than what the war had made him. But trauma doesn't let go easily. When Grace died, the small light she brought into his darkness went out, and the world collapsed inward again. Psychologists call this re-traumatization, when new pain reactivates every old wound. After her death, Tommy didn't just lose Grace, he lost the proof that he could still feel. His empire grew, but his humanity shrank. Love had shown him a way out, but it also reminded him how far gone he already was. When the war ended, Tommy didn't just come home. He came back with a mission: to lift his family out of the mud, to build something untouchable, to rewrite the story society had written for them. On the surface, it looked like greed or ambition, but beneath it was something more primal: revenge against the system that once spat on his bloodline. In early 20th century Britain, class wasn't just an identity, it was a prison, and Tommy refused to die inside it. Psychologists call this trauma transference, turning personal pain into external conquest. His family became both his army and his therapy. Every victory over the rich, every deal made with politicians, was a form of healing, twisted but real. He didn't want to destroy the system. He wanted to bend it until it finally respected him. Yet power is a cruel substitute for peace. The higher he climbed, the further he drifted from the love he swore to protect. The final image of Tommy Shelby riding a white horse through the fire is more than cinematic beauty. It's myth reborn. At the start of Peaky Blinders, he rode a black horse, a symbol of death and guilt. By the end, it turns white, a silent confession that he's ready to be cleansed, or perhaps forgiven. In Jungian psychology, white often represents the integration of the shadow, the moment when a person stops running from their darkness and finally accepts it as part of who they are. For Tommy, that horse is not escape, it's surrender. A man who's fought the world now rides towards stillness, stripped of titles and wars. The flames around him aren't punishment, they're purification. He isn't the devil walking into hell, he's a soldier walking out of it. In that final silence, there's no triumph, no tragedy, only peace earned through exhaustion. The myth fades, but the man finally breathes. In the end, Tommy Shelby is not just one man's tragedy, he is all of us. His pain, his hunger for control, his search for redemption mirror the same wound carried by a generation that rebuilt itself from ruins. Psychologists say trauma doesn't disappear, it changes shape, it becomes ambition, perfectionism, or silence. Tommy's silence is ours, the collective echo of people who learned to survive but forgot how to live. Peaky Blinders, at its core, isn't about gangsters or power. It's about ghosts, the ones we inherit and the ones we create. And maybe that's why Tommy stays with us, because beneath the violence and the whiskey and the smoke, he is just a man trying to make peace with himself. The white horse isn't freedom, it's forgiveness. A reminder that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means riding forward, even when the fire is still behind you. We all deserve that final ride.